Yeah, no fuck going on. Spiral. Yeah. Bitch. Drop top, foreign cool, cover new whip. Only fuck with bitches, give me top, man, some new drip. Full clip, kill that nigga on some whole shit. He don't wanna smoke, so I hit him in his fucking lip. Drop top, foreign cool, cover new whip. Only fuck with bitches, give me top, man, some new drip. Full clip, kill that nigga on some whole shit. He don't wanna smoke, so I hit him in his fucking lip.
じゃあ準備はいいですか?
If you've been a part of the gaming community in the last decade or so, then you've probably heard of this. Gatekeeping, or better known as the second worst thing to come out of the gaming community, besides Cheater McCheater Pants over here, and yeah. It's probably one of the most recurring topics of debates in the current generation of games that's always at the forefront of most gaming discussions. And yet, nobody can seem to understand why. At least that's the case on a surface level. From the outside looking in, gatekeeping seems like a very selfish thing to do. I mean, a quick search on Google and you're presented with a basic definition of it being the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. In the case of the gaming community, it's usually spun as entitled / overprotective or even elitist gamers trying to prevent people from accessing, enjoying, and participating in fandom discussions in ways that they themselves don't deem appropriate. To a majority of people, this act is seen as being very toxic, if not just downright insulting. But in all honesty, is gatekeeping really all that bad? Obviously, I'm pretty sure most of you have probably answered that question with a yes. I mean, which is cool, since, everyone should be entitled to express their opinions without the fear of being judged for them. However, is gatekeeping really so bad and so divisive that people always have to constantly bring it up whenever two people's opinions on a game clash? Or is it that gatekeeping has just been portrayed in a negative way in order to favor a certain demographic of gamers over the other? All these and many more similar questions have yet to be answered and plague the gaming community and divide us even more. Okay, grab yourself a pencil and a book because we're about to have a quick history lesson. Gatekeeping isn't a new buzzword. If anything, it's been a part of the English and psychological language for a hot minute now. Coined by German social psychologist Kurt Lewin, gatekeeping was seen as a mechanism used to prevent unwanted things from disrupting a person's own self. Basically, think of it kind of like Star Platinum's self-preservation, only your brain does it unconsciously and only the things it believes you don't want to hear. Nowadays, in modern day psychology, gatekeeping is seen as an essential theory behind communication as well as how information is kept and passed between different cultures and people. For example, news stations. They have a tendency of selecting what portions of information or stories they wish to share with the public. They gatekeep what they believe is not essential information and spread the rest in order to appease the masses. In simpler terms, the editors are the gatekeepers and the information that is not put into print is what they gatekeep. Now let's apply this to video games. The activity of controlling and limiting general access to a fandom. Typically, in fandoms, this is done by someone of high validity, who takes it upon themselves to decide who does or does not have rights or access to the community as well as an identity. Now remember this part, because this is going to be very important later on in the video. The decisions they make are usually used against newer fans of a medium who don't yet understand or don't know about already preconceived notions that would otherwise be considered acceptable about discussions or norms in said medium or fandoms. Stuff like subsurface knowledge or unjustified expression of opinions not backed by facts, aka headcanons, aren't enough for people to be considered part of the community or to self-identify as members. To do so, they need to have a deeper than average understanding of the complexities of X, Y, and Z topics in the medium in order for the community to accept them and not just see them as like another poser or something like that. Now, while all these can be seen as somewhat strict but understandable rules to abide by in order to be part of the community, to the average person, this form of restriction can come off as gatekeeping, and it's usually met with two very condescending arguments. Alright, before I continue, let's play a game real quick. I want you to close your eyes and try to think of other places where gatekeeping can possibly happen. I can even name a few. Universities and colleges, places where students are gate-kept from enrolling and accessing academic credentials based on their past academic merits or even monetary wealth. How about our country's foreign vetting process? That's basically super gatekeeping, since we're preventing people from entering into our country based on skin color or other prejudice. Controlling and limiting general access to something, aka a better life. Why is it that those cases are constitutionally approved, but if I were to go on social media and say something along the lines of, I don't know, Persona fans aren't true Mega 10 players, or if I were to suggest that we alienate the entire Smash player base from other gaming communities, since a majority of them have never actually played games that most of the characters are from, I would be seen as a bad guy. But the thing is, none of the examples I just said are mutually exclusive. In all 4 cases, none is any more ethically or morally correct. In all 4 cases, people are being prevented or just downright excluded from enjoying something because of a certain criteria they have no control over. Obviously, these are the more extreme examples of gatekeeping, but it still stands that for most people, gatekeeping comes down to a them versus us mentality. The most common form of gatekeeping is usually when something that's been a norm for a long while is suddenly changed for the sake of broadening its reach. In gaming, this is usually seen when a company changes something about a series or a franchise in order to appeal to a larger demographic or to make it more accessible to a more casual market. This can be seen as a good thing, but in reality, it's not, since the degradation of complexity can be way more detrimental to the growth of a community. Whatever would have been gained from the changes, they lose way more by alienating the one thing that essentially got them where they were in the first place, their original fans. This is also what can cause toxic behaviors in community, because the new people that come in are now forced to adhere to rules being imposed by the older people. It kind of becomes this weird paradoxical state where in order for the new members to be recognized in the community, they need to interact, but they can't do so since they are being shunned from the community by rules they have no control over. As such, being part of a fandom is no longer about whether or not your knowledge of the medium is large enough to justify your place, but whether or not your views align closely with the views of the majority, which in all honesty should never be the case. And with gaming companies being greedy, money-hungry businesses, newer fans kind of feel entitled to speak out on the mistreatment since they believe they essentially have a monetary hold on the prospect of a fan base. In other words, the whole "your game wouldn't have been popular if not for us" argument. In turn, it becomes a vicious cycle of back and forth that goes nowhere, and only the people who tick the right boxes gain power to speak for those who do not, completely misrepresenting the community as a whole. But again, this shouldn't be the case. When entering into a new fandom, your enjoyment and validity shouldn't be limited to whether or not you agree with whatever the top people in the fandom say and believe. If we were to break down fandoms in the most simple to understand form, it would be something like this. Fandoms are kind of like anime high schools, where you have senpais and you have kohais. The senpais are the higher ups, the people who have been in the fandoms for a long time, the people who are super knowledgeable about the fandoms. Basically, the people you can rely on. The kohais are the new people that join into the fandom. For example, a Persona fan who wants to get into other Mega 10 games and decides to join a Mega 10 Discord server. In this case, it's up to the senpais, aka the more experienced members of the community, to do their best to impart what knowledge they have about topics and dynamics present in their community in the best way possible to the kohai so that they feel welcome and also manage to keep a sense of balance. In turn, starting a cycle where said kohai can do the same thing to a newer member down the line. Now, everything isn't perfect since in most fandoms we have what people like to call posers. Posers are people who pretend to be knowledgeable members of the community, whether it's for clout or in order to not stay out of the loop. This usually isn't much of a problem, however, it does happen that sometimes posers are also newer members to a community, and they start spreading false information to other newer members as if they're an experienced member, which can accidentally misshape the perception of the community to these newer members. It also doesn't help that most fandoms aren't filled with the most sociable and vocal people. However, that doesn't mean that some random person with a big following can just assimilate himself into a fandom and start preaching random stuff and then completely invalidate the options of other people who were there prior. Inclusivity should never be confused for being nice. This is essentially why gatekeeping is a thing. Nobody's saying people can't enjoy things differently. Just don't go joining a community expecting people to be 100% accepting about your views. Especially when those views are radically biased and contradict already well-established and factually checked information. At the same time, newer members shouldn't be afraid to interject or express newer opinions without the fear of being chastised. Doing either of those things is how you prevent your community from growing stronger. When new people join and start spouting nonsense about their headcanons and nobody challenges them, these headcanons can and will eventually start to be taken seriously by newer members down the road. This can seriously hurt a fandom that has worked really hard to present itself in a specific way, and it can also dilute the identities of the people present in the fandom, meaning that whatever the fandom originally stood for gets changed as well. Remember earlier in the video when I talked about how there are specific people in fandoms who take it upon themselves to decide who has rights, access, or even identities in a community? This is important because for most people, these fandoms aren't just places to discuss about games and hang out. They're a part of their identity. These communities are what has shaped them into the people that they are. So when new people come in and start to change things or even retcon what little is left of the community, then the identities and the values held by that community also go along. And in turn, they lose a piece of themselves in the process. So, after all that, the question still stands. Is gatekeeping bad? In a general sense, yes. The discrimination and prevention of people's enjoyment of things should never be seen as a good thing. However, is it as bad as people make it out to be? Not entirely. Since for most communities, it's the only thing they have left in order to preserve what sense of pride and identity the community once held. In brief, gatekeeping isn't about keeping the wrong people out or about self-inflation where people elevate themselves about being in a fandom for a sense of superiority. It's about preventing the loss of what little the group clings onto in order to stop him from eroding and changing completely and losing not only what the fandom's identity used to be, but also their own in the process. Hey guys, it's your boy Waifu here at the end slate of the video, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this video. And this video, although just not this video, but like this topic has been in my mind for a minute now, and I've just decided right now, I just choose now to decide to, make this video. And I'm sure, and I guess if you enjoy what you heard and you enjoy watching this video, then I guess leave a like and share with friends, because I would really appreciate that. And if you didn't, well then you can always leave your opinions and your topics and whatever down in the comment section below. I always love reading whatever people have to say. It's always the best. I guess that's all. I guess sub if you want to. I don't know why you would sub to this channel. I don't really upload anything. I rarely do. Follow me on Twitch. That's where I usually do most of my other stuff. I also like talking about other topics on my Twitch channel. These are my other social media sites, and that's about it.